The Art of War, the Denma translation. Introduction. Applying the Art of War. About 2,300 years ago, in what is now North China, a lineage of military leaders put their collective wisdom into written form for the first time. Their text was to shape the strategic thinking of all East Asia. It offered a radically new perspective on conflict, where one might attain victory without going to battle. Though in the West, their text is called The Art of War, in China it is still known as the Sun Tzu, named for the patriarch of their lineage. Over the last half-century, this book has become a handbook for all people around the world seeking to transform their approach to conflict, whether in warfare, in business, or simply in everyday life. When a squadron leader targets his objective or a boardroom falls under siege, when our neighbors join a zoning battle to protect local parkland, we may find modern-day warriors turning to the Sun Tzu. Clearly, they have a conviction that its ancient wisdom has considerable value today. But how can we apply this Chinese text to our lives in a genuine manner? How can it teach us to work more effectively with conflict? These are the central questions of this book. The answers lie within the Sun Tzu itself. The text shows how to conquer without aggression, whether our conflict is large or small, personal or national. One of its most famous couplets states, 100 victories in 100 battles is not the most skillful. Subduing the other's military without battle is the most skillful. The wisdom of this book is a profound human knowledge, something to which every one of us has access. It does not belong to any proprietary group, Chinese or Western. It shows a way of working with conflicts that is sane, kindly, and effective. Though the Sun Tzu offers morals and behavior, it does not suggest we copy it. Instead, it invites us to enter its teachings fully. When we do so, we find we come naturally to the same insights that are contained within its text. The Sun Tzu begins with the understanding that conflict is an integral part of human life. It is within us and all around us. Sometimes we can skillfully sidestep it, but at other times we must join with it directly. Many of us have seen the destructive power of aggression, whether at a personal level or in the disasters of armed conflict. We know all well the limitations of most political and personal responses to that aggression. How can we work with it in a more profound and effective way? The Sun Tzu recommends that our response to conflict start with knowledge of ourselves and of the other. In Chapter 3 it says, and so in the military, knowing the other and knowing oneself, in 100 battles, no danger. Not knowing the other and knowing oneself, one victory for one loss. Not knowing the other and not knowing oneself, every battle certain defeat. Self-knowledge in the Sun Tzu contains awareness of the full condition of our forces, but it begins with something far more intimate, knowledge of our own minds. People come to this knowledge in many ways. The contemplative practice of sight, more basic than any particular practice though, is the openness to which it leads. The openness can be present in all our activities. We find ourselves there when we experience in a sudden moment of beauty. It is the unformed, creative source of the lasting parts, as the zone, and lovers do not even need it. It is where they are most at home and their actions most effective. Why though any weary of the destructive force study a text about conflict? As the Sun Tzu says, it is essential to know ourselves, to know our own minds, but we also live in a world where aggression cannot be avoided. We must know the other in order to skillfully engage him or her. It is necessary, therefore, to learn to work directly with the conflict in our environment, not ignore it, submerge it, give up on it, or to try to deny its existence. However profound our individual wisdom, it will survive in the world unless it is done with some kind of power. Recognizing this seems especially important at the present time, when the consequences of human action can be so thoroughly devastating. This text, then, shows how we work both within and outside ourselves. The military lineage that brought the art of war into the world traced itself back to a master strategist named Sun Tzu. According to legend, he had been celebrated for brilliant campaigns conducted around the time of Confucius, the 6th century BC. This work of military strategy was passed on to subsequent linear holders, as organization and laborious copying on bamboo strips. Its wisdom was known to outsiders, and increasingly it circulated throughout ancient China. We know it was by early emperors, for the Imperial Library Catalogue of the 1st century BCE lists a copy in its collection. The text's reputation spread from China throughout East Asia, and the figure of Sun Tzu came to represent the supreme model of strategic thinking. Through what process, though, are we to make a genuine connection with this ancient work from so far away, learning to practice from the heart of its tradition, rather than simply admiring or manipulating? We are aided here by the example of the sage commander, the general to whom the Sun Tzu is addressed. He embodies the review of the text, and his allows us to see the full range of his activity. Though when taken together, the achievements may seem extraordinary, every one of his qualities is already present in each of us. Such abilities grow naturally from our native capacities to see, hear, think, and interact with the world. The English language still asks us to choose between masculine and feminine pronouns. Because Chinese journals have historically been men, we have adopted the convention of referring to the sage commander throughout as he. It is central to our understanding, however, that the knowledge and action of the sage commander are the property of neither male nor female. The wisdom of the Sun Tzu applies not just to men in a military setting, but to anyone seeking to work with conflict without aggression. We recognize the qualities of the sage commander in certain unusual men. They may have a remarkable calm about them, or they may appear endlessly resourceful. At the same time, it is possible that such people have never heard of the Sun Tzu. Their examples demonstrate the way in which the wisdom found in this text is not a foreign import, but is instead a natural flowering of common human faculties. If we seek the root of the sage commander's power, we discover that he is simply and genuinely himself, always comfortable with who he is. The more he relaxes, the greater the power associated with him. In some people, openness may arise quite spontaneously. They may develop it from a strong discipline, or out of the sharp and sudden experience of seeing through the hold that fear has upon the human. From this fearlessness, the sage commander develops an appreciation of the world around him. He no longer regards things as for or against him, but sees them with a dispassionate judgment. He holds no fixed position or identity. Thus his wisdom emerges on the moment, in the spot. The Sun Tzu repeatedly stresses that such wisdom is the root of skillful action. It is the first of the general's four qualities, chapter 1. It determines the difference between victory and defeat. Thus in chapter 10, the text says, knowing my troops can strike, yet not knowing the enemy cannot be struck. This is half the victory. Knowing the enemy can be struck, yet not knowing my enemies cannot strike. This is half the victory. Knowing the enemy can be struck, knowing my soldiers can strike, yet not knowing that the form of earth cannot be used to do battle. This is half of victory. This knowing begins with the visible details of troop strength and supply, but strengthens through these to encompass the complexity of events, which the great general also knows. It includes insight into the extraordinary and orthodox manifestations of battle, and brings with it the ability to feel hope and chaos. How do we apply this knowledge? There are many opportunities, even in our for reasons of refuses. If the mother refrains from action, her son may not get the sleep he needs, and may suspect that he can refuse all future commands. However, if she presses straight ahead, the mother only bolsters her son's resistance. What is the right course of action? How does she bring about the desired effect without creating a bigger war and a less workable life? First of all, we cannot expect to advise the parent in the abstract, except in the broadest sense. Skillful action emerges only from knowledge of all the details that go to make up the situation. In other words, we are on our own. Each has a new life situation arises. No person, no book, no external wisdom can tell us how to act. Even previously successful models cannot simply be laid over the unique realities of our present situation. As Chapter 1 of the Sun Tzu says, these are the victories of the military revolution. They cannot be transmitted in advance. Thus we must determine the means for victory, now and here, since its conditions exist only in the moment. Therefore we all recognize a mother's feeling for her child, and each of us can see that the enemy is human, just as we are. This wisdom does not originate in some external source. Rather, it is insight we all possess. It requires no unusual talent, nothing that is not already ours. We need only our intelligence, attention to the moment, and openness to the world. At the same time, we can also develop all of these capabilities. Approaching the Sun Tzu in this way, we see that its teachings are not limited to any single realm of activity. Its language can equally apply to the mother putting her son to bed, and to a platoon commander who resists superior officer's disastrous order to fight the wrong opponent. Sun Tzu works at the level of the battle of ego or of warfare between nations and everything between. Yet its specific application can only come from the uniqueness of a particular case. This uniqueness has far-reaching implications for how one studies the text and practices it in real-life situations. It means that the present translation of the Sun Tzu can only be one part of a complex process. The text contains the words, and the words set out the nature of conflict, providing us with a host of models. But only when we have gone beyond specific words, concepts, and examples will we be free to respond openly and accurately to the life situation that is arising before, around, and within us. It is helpful to this process if we can identify the perspective of Sun Tzu, see the world the way it does. Above all, this is the view of taking hold. Taking hold means conquering the enemy in a way that keeps as much intact as possible, both our own resources and those of our opponent. Such a victory leaves something available on which to build, both for us and for our former foe. This is not merely a philosophical stance or altruistic approach. The instruction just for those defeated, their dwellings and their earth, but also for conquerors attempting to enforce their peace long after battle has passed. True victory is victory over aggression, a victory that respects the enemy's basic humanity, and thus renders further conflict unnecessary. Taking hold begins with the ordinary details of our lives. It includes all of them. The mother trying to put her son to bed must know his habits, temperament, and disposition, as well as her own. How these vary throughout the day, and what special factors are at play that particular evening. Sensing their configuration, her actions shift with and in these changing conditions. Throughout, she seeks a larger perspective. That larger perspective is so powerful, it brings other people to a view initially see. Her son, our enemy, our reluctant enemies, is both powerful and attractive because it includes them in a way they recognize, which is accompanied beyond petty concerns and respecting of their own intelligence and perspective. This is not simply bringing about out the other person over to your side, but bringing him or her to something larger than either side. This view is always there. It comes with considerable responsibility. Taking hold is both a way of being and a way of seeing. Because our actions lies naturally on it is also a way of acting. It does not preclude the use of force. In using force, it seeks to preserve the possibilities, to keep the options open, and include the welfare of the other. It leads ultimately to victory. One manifestation of taking hold is a victory that occurs without battle. But winning without fighting is not simply an alternate way to reach our objective, this time without expending valuable resources. It is a fundamentally different understanding of the conflict. Examples win-win, in which each party wins, but to the particular desires of either side to a larger vision. It applies both to friendly negotiations between equals and to unequal forces caught in bitter conflict. This victory carries tremendous power, since it owes no loyalty to smaller reference points. Victory embraces all aspects of the world. Rejecting parts of it means that we have given up on the workability of the situation and are left with force as the only option. This perpetuates the struggle in ourselves and all around us. It solidifies the view of the other as our opposite and of conflict as win or lose. It makes us susceptible to defeat, since it captures our mind, closes off our perceptions of the world, and prevents a full knowledge from rising. However appealing this vision of victory, it is still true that the Sun Tzu was written very long ago by people whose world was vastly different from ours. If we wish to study the text, how can we find its essential teachings, while still acknowledging that they arose at a unique time and place? We cannot simply ignore these differences and decide that their ideas mean whatever we would like. This question about lineage through time and space, between the foreign and the familiar. Now we are claiming it can belong to us. A better understanding of the nature of how the text arose and what it meant to the world of its first users will help us see how the text could belong to our world today. Scholars believe that the Sun Tzu emerged from the oral tradition sometime in the 4th century BCE, at a time when Chinese models of governance, warfare, morality, and social organization were experiencing extreme dislocation. Endemic warfare had destroyed confidence in the old ways. The widest variety of solutions was proposed, from traditional forms to a hard-edged organizational efficiency useful to the formation of large armies and impersonal bureaucracies. The response of the Sun Tzu was to emphasize that knowledge rises in the present moment. Any form could be helpful, but its application depends on insight into one's present circumstances, into the nowness of the situation. Such knowledge, the text argues, cannot be transmitted in advance. Thus, the Sun Tzu does not organize its thought into stages we might follow. Now we read a book, often find it helpful to seek out its essential principles, extracting them and then generalizing from them, applying them skillfully to new situations. This can be an extremely powerful and efficient way to acquire instruction and knowledge. But though the Sun Tzu does contain a few principles, not such as transmitted in advance, it mostly offers us examples that can embody the point of view from which it regards the world. It is a clearly linked set of observations and models, with only the barest argumentation connecting them. It does not develop its doctrines as logical demonstration. Rather, it is by analogy and metaphor. We cannot simply pluck its insights and apply them into our already existing framework. We must develop new ways of our minds. Our book therefore offers a society of the Sun Tzu. It is not necessary to read it straight through. Some readers may want to begin with the three S's in the middle that introduce its thought and practice. The first of these essays, in whole, presents the view of the text, showing its implication for working with the present moment. It develops the idea of Tao as a way of seeing and doing. The second, the same commander, we give fuller vision of the central figure of the book, whom we have briefly described above. It describes the developed person in order to seek the recognition of these qualities in ourselves. The third, joining the tradition, explores how an ancient text has the possibility of meeting the current moment. Part of the reason lies in the Sun Tzu itself. The fundamental remarking of the Western worldview occurred over the last 100 years. Qualities of the Chinese language also suggested a particular translation strategy. When we first read English language versions of the Sun Tzu in the 1970s, we were convinced, like many others, that it might contain enormous power. Yet we were frustrated, since its wisdom often seemed concealed in paraphrase. Going to the original Chinese, we were astounded by its simplicity, clarity, and bluntness. It stopped one's mind mid-thought. We had a definitive conviction that it should be possible to reproduce these qualities in English. It was also clear why other translations had filled in many words and explanations. The text would be extremely difficult, sometimes confusing its Chinese commentators. Our translation aims to preserve the naked quality, produce the sound and feel, and thus capture the mood of the Sun's first emerging from the tradition. We have forged a lithic, unadorned English, halfway between prose and poetry. Its simplicity encourages the reader to approach the book without undue reliance on concept, allowing the sounds, patterns, and meaning to seep into the mind. As we remove the filters between ancient text and modern reader, the Sun Tzu begins to reveal itself directly to us. Chapter 1. Appraisals. Sun Tzu said, is a great matter of the state. It is the ground of death and life, the Tao of survival or extinction. One cannot but examine it. And so base it in the five, compare by means of the appraisals, thus seek out its nature. The first is Tao, the second is heaven, the third is earth, the fourth is the general, the fifth is method. Tao is what causes the people to have the same purpose as their superior. Thus they can die with him, live with him, and not deceive him. Heaven is yin and yang, hot and cold, the order of the seasons. Going with it, going against it, this is military victory. Earth is high and low, broad and narrow, far and near, steep and level, death and life. The general is knowledge, trustworthiness, and strictness. Method is ordering divisions, the Tao of ranking and supply. As for all these five, no general has not heard of them. Knowing them, one is victorious. Not knowing them, one is not victorious. And so compare by means of the appraisals. Thus seek out its nature. As which ruler has thou? Which general has ability? Contains heaven and earth? Which implements method and orders, whose military and multitudes are strong, whose officers and soldiers are trained, whose rewards and punishments are clear. By these I know victory and defeat. The general heeds my appraisals. Employ him, and he is certainly victorious. Retain him. The general does not heed my appraisals. Employ him and he is certainly defeated. Remove him. Having appraised the advantages here, then make them into sheep, and aid with the external. Sheep is governing the balance according to the advantages. The military is a bow of deception. Thus, when able, manifest ability. When active, manifest inactivity. When near, manifest as far. When far, manifest as near. Thus, when he seeks his advantage, lure him. When he is in chaos, take him. When he is substantial, prepare against him. When he is strong, avoid him. When he is wrathful, harass him. Attack where he is unprepared. Emerge where he does not expect it. These are the victories of the military branch. They cannot be transmitted in advance. Now, in the rod counting at court before battle, one is victorious who gets many counting rods. In the rod counting at court before battle, one is not victorious who gets few counting rods. Many counting rods is victorious over few counting rods. How much more so over no counting rods? By these means I observe that victory and defeat are apparent.